Kalyani is
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. How are you all? Good?
Yeah.
On, lots of rain.
Yes, in
Lots of
Mumbai
rain.
also. A lot of rain.
Yeah.
Ganesh, you can start recording and then Jamila can start.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Shika is.
Yeah.
Greetings
Jamila,
to
you can start.
everyone who have joined us on this platform. We have with us the president of the AIWC, Liji, and we also have the past president with us, Sheila ji, who's joining us from Bombay. And Kalyani ji is joining us from Delhi. And we also have Shikha Mitra here with us, and quite a number of others who will be joining us on this platform. So greetings to all of you, and good afternoon to all the members of the AIWC who are joining us on this platform, and all our guests. And I think the students of Liji Varghese has also joined us. Today is the second session of, or what you call the part 2 of our earlier session on exploring history, society, and culture of Russia, which Liji did for us last month. By request, everyone wanted to know more about Russia. And so I went back to Liji, and Liji was gracious to say that she would give us a second session. And I understand she's going to take us on a cruise through the grand arena of Russian arts, the land of the Barynyas and the Balalaikas. I hope I got that right. It is, I'm sure, going to be a very interesting cruise through the landscape of Russian culture. This is our 44th session of the Cultural and Literary Forum. And we are proud to say that we have been doing this without any break. So once again, a very warm welcome to Usha, who has joined us, or who hosts this platform for us. Thank you, Usha, for keeping this very live. And Bhuneshwari for helping us with the recording and the Zoom platform. So a very warm welcome to both of you. I'm very happy that both of you have been able to join us today and are here. My regards also to Indra Ramakrishna Madam, who is, of course, I would say the root cause for all of us being here today and communicating with one another. A very warm welcome to Indra Madam and everyone here. Kultik ji has also joined, and she is a regular person who joins these talks. So a very warm welcome to you, Kultik ji, and the rest of you. Now, just to introduce what Liji has been saying, and perhaps maybe talking to us, is about the Russian arts and the culture and the paintings, the literature, the folk arts, the folk dance, the opera, the music. So I thought a good introduction to this would be, first of all, to think of the Russian flag. Every country raises its flag in a spirit of pride. And Russia too has unfurled its flag and does it every year on August 22, which marks for them the National Flag Day. I don't think any other country has this particular event of hoisting the Russian flag and observing it as the National Flag Day of a country. Maybe this is because Russia has great pride in its flag. And if you look at the colors of the flag, you have white on the top, then followed by blue below that, and the red color. And since the past, during Alexander III's time of Russia itself, the three colors used to symbolize The white symbolized nobility and frankness, and the blue, faithfulness, honesty, and chastity and impeccability. And the red stood for courage, generosity, and love. I think all the positive emotions that we talk about are brought together in these three colors, the white, blue, and the red. But if you go back a little to on the history of the flag in Russia, it was in August 1991, the tricolor flag as it is today was raised in the Russian Parliament building. And the day also marked the beginning of the post-Soviet era. So you have a seminal significance also for the hoisting of the flag every year to suggest that they have, in fact, moved out of a joint kind of a country to a nation that takes pride in what it is. Russia also had a different flag in the past, comprising a red banner with a golden hammer, sickle, and a red star. Of course, we all know that was the communist regime. And it was under the communist regime that many of the writers in Russia also lived under great stress, and they could not publish whatever they wanted. Particularly Mikhail Sholokhov and others talk about how in novels like The Quiet Flows the Dawn, they talk about how they were restricted to publishing what they wrote. They could not even think along their own lines. They had to think along the lines of the socialist country and the socialist political arena that was there. Maybe that is why we find that many of the writers refused to accept the Nobel Prize for Literature when it was offered to them. And we have Boris Pasternak, whom we know, particularly through the films like Dr. Zhivago and his novel, Zhivago. But an interesting thing that I found when I was reading about Pasternak was that he has also written about Anna Akhmatova, who's one of the greatest poets of Russia. So there seems to be a kind of bonding within these literary writers and kind of romanticism that was couched in an emotional agony of what the nation was going through. The pride in their nation was coupled with the sorrow and the loss of dignity of a nation that these writers felt and could not express freely. Here's a short part of a poem that Akhmatova wrote, and which I found very interesting, and which she wrote particularly through the 900-day siege during the World War II, and when she could not move out of Leningrad. So confined to a particular place for 900 days, and then writing about a poem which she titled Poem Without a Hero. So this is the way the poem goes. I have lit my treasured candles one by one to halo this night with you who do not come. I wait the birth of the year. So the year or the new year or the change never comes. Dear God, the flame has drowned in crystal, and the wine like poison burns old malice, bites the air. Old ravings rave again, through the hour has not yet struck. Dread, bottomless dread. I am that shadow on the threshold, defending my remnant peace. So a very moving poem where she talks about the agony of being confined to a particular place. So this, when we talk about art, when we talk about literature, and we talk about the culture of a country, it's always good to remember that it is the creative writers who, through their experiences of life in a country that did not have the kind of freedom that Indians like us enjoy in our democracy, lived through periods of harsh repression and the way in which they were trying to come out of that. Maybe that is one of the reasons that when we look at the paintings also, we find this kind of a repressive romanticism in it. There is not that kind of flowering of romanticism that we associate with the British romanticism or even the French romanticism. to talk about the environment of Russia, and I'm sure Liji is going to talk to us more about it, the entire landscape of Russia. It's very interesting to see that the agricultural land was only a small portion of the cultivable land was only a small portion of the big nation of Russia. And that fishing was more of an industry because there was the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, the Caspian Sea, the Black Sea. So they had so much of water all around them. And of course, they had a lot of mining as well, rich in oils. It was this that made Russia prosperous. And it was not the food that was exported or the farming that was done. Another interesting thing again is the way in which the cattle took a very significant part of the Russian economy. Pastures and meadows were grown on arable land to feed the cows. And of course, we know the way in which milk flowed out of Russia. And of course, the blood flowed out of Russia at one point of time. So these are things that give us the image of a country bounded by a lot of oceans, water, yet not fully agricultural. All the entire, the entire land of Russia was not arable. Here was a country again where we find that this sense of belonging to a country was something that was always distanced. There were a lot of ethnic groups in Russia. More immigrants came into Russia, so it became a very multicultural matrix, a society that was very multicultural. And it is this society that ultimately produced its art and literatures and its culture. So you cannot say that it is a purity of culture or a purity of Byzantine culture which came down to Russia and which was accepted, the Byzantine architecture that was accepted by Russia, that ultimately showcases the nationality of what we call Russia and Russian. So it is not a monolithic framework of Russia, but I would say a very diverse, like India, with many languages, many different kinds of people, many different forms, art forms, many different ways of expression that we associate with a country like Russia. So it's a very, I think, difficult task for Liji, I know, to compress all this into half an hour to tell us, 45 minutes to tell us all about it. But I'm sure she'll be able to do it, given her track record, her qualifications, I've already introduced Liji in the last session, but once again to tell you that Liji is an associate professor at All Saints College, Trivandrum. She distinguished herself in her right through her educational track. She was a first rank holder for her BA and for her MA, and did her PhD in the shortest time possible, submitted it, and took a very difficult writer like Salman Rushdie to do her PhD. So she has a track record of brilliance, and I'm sure that Liji is going to tell us so many things that so many of us don't know. And I'm sure that all of you are eagerly awaiting to hear Liji. So over to you, Liji.
Thank you, dear Jamila ma'am, for that wonderful introduction. And I'm sure that I couldn't have had a better introduction for my talk also, your introduction on Russia. So respected members of the AIWC, my dear Jamila ma'am, I think it's quite an honor to be here today for the second lecture on the second talk on Russia. So today, rather than going with the political flow or discussing more about the political past of Russia, I'll be solely focusing on the culture, the art specifically. And it is a very wide area because Russia, as ma'am has correctly pointed out, has a very diverse culture. right from the time of the Byzantine influence, then the Mongols came in, and then there's the East Slavic tradition, which was already there. Then you have all these traditions coming from Ukraine, Chechen. So all these traditions together give us what we can call as the composite structure of Russia as we know it today. So I will be looking at the major points of Russian art. Let me share my slide with you. I hope the slide is visible. The presentation, the PPT is visible.
Yes.
Yes, we can see it.
So I've titled my presentation as The Land of Barynyas and Balalaikas, Cruising Through the Grand Arena of Russian Arts. Barynya is a very popular Russian folk dance, and Balalaika is a stringed instrument, which is quite similar to our guitar. So I thought, I'll combine dance and song together to give you an idea about the beauty of Russian culture. So I have made a small route map of my presentation. So I'll be looking at the visual arts first, then moving on to performing arts, then going on to discuss a few points about motion pictures, the music, and of course, you cannot talk about Russia without looking at the literary geniuses of Russia, and conclude my presentation with the cultural institution by talking about the cultural institutions. So here we go, Russian visual arts. We will be talking about painting and sculptures. So the earliest period of Russian painting, you will see that it started with the Christianization of Russia in the 10th century. And the paintings were, singularly religious. In the sense that they painted biblical scenes onto wood using egg yolk and egg white. So that is a very ingenious use of eggs, like we didn't know about it. So egg yolk to mix the colors, and egg white was used as a preservative. And these wooden icons later on became part of what you call as the iconostasis, which is a wall separating the nave of the sanctuary. And these icons, we don't know who actually painted these icons because they were painted by anonymous monks who otherwise spend their time fasting, praying. So we don't really know who painted them, but they were painted by monks. And they used materials like birch, pine, limewood panels, and they scraped the outer corner of the panel in such a way that the protruding edges sort of, gave us a frame around the icon. And we have the Novgorod school of icon painting, which is considered to be the best school ever. I mean, they did not actually proclaim themselves as a school. It's the later history that gave them the name of the Novgorod school of icon painting, but they are the ones who actually produce the best icon paintings that we have. And the well-known painters in this school are Andrei Rublev, Theophanes the Greek. He was a Greek monk who had joined the Russian Orthodox Church, and Dionysius. Now, moving on to Parsunas. In the last talk, I had been talking about Tsar Ivan. And Ivan had all these, wonderful ideas. And one day he suddenly thought, why should it just be, biblical paintings? Why can't I be portrayed in one of these paintings? So he called his Togla, which stands for a religious council. And he said that, maybe czars and other historical figures should be included in these paintings. So it is then that you have the fashion for the Parsunas. Parsuna is actually coming from a Latin word, which means the person. So you have the first instance of non-religious portraits in Russian culture. And the same techniques that were used in icon paintings began to be used for the paintings of non-religious portraits. And here the focus was not on the divinity of the person, but more on the social status of the person. So I'll give you two examples. On the left, you have an icon. It's the Vladimir Virgin with Child, and it's a 12th century icon. And then you have the Parsuna, and this is actually the Parsuna of Ivan the Terrible. So it has all the characteristics of icon painting, but instead of a biblical figure or a saint or anybody divine, you have Ivan, who is not divine, but was called as Ivan the Terrible. So then it's during the time of Peter the Art, a great change happened in the Russian arena, because Peter was a patron of arts. He did not just inspire architecture, he was also somebody who promoted visual arts. And what Peter the Great did was that he brought artists to Russia. He thought, okay, these people don't know anything, let me teach them. And he actively invited people like Francisco Rastrelli. And he also gave Russian artists stipends so that they would go abroad and study all the techniques and bring it back. So Peter the Great's reign, Tsar Peter the Great's reign was considered to be a breaking point in, a sort of a point that divided Russian history. So he sent all the artists out to study abroad, and probably, the most famous artist who was sent out to study was Ivan Nikitin. And he is considered to be the founder of Russian fine art tradition because he was the one who introduced the concept of perspective into painting, which was something that was found in Western paintings, but not in Russian icons. So perspective refers to how you can incorporate three-dimensional objects into a two-dimensional painting. So that was introduced by Ivan Nikitin. And the other members are Andrei Matveev, Alexei Andropov, Vladimir Borovikovsky, and Ivan Vishnyakov. These Russian names are way too difficult, to say. And I hope that I'm pronouncing them right. I'm just going by a blind guess here. Yeah, so despite Nikitin's success using a Western approach to painting, he was also concerned about the growing Westernization of Russian painting, and therefore he was rather reluctant to abandon the icon style. So in his paintings, you will find that he is also incorporating elements of icon painting into his work. And alongside painting, you should also talk about sculptures, because in Russia, wherever you go, you will find all these fine sculptures. They give a lot of importance to their sculptures. And sculpture art was again something that Peter the Great gave a lot of importance to. So you have many foreign architects, many foreign sculptors who were regularly invited to come to Russia and work along with the native artists so that their quality would also improve. So among the great Russian sculptors of this time was Ivan Zarudny. And he is considered to be the mastermind behind the iconostasis at Peter and Paul Cathedral, which is a very famous cathedral in Russia. And not much is known about Ivan Zarudny's life or, how he was. So we know that he was a sculptor and that he did contribute a lot to Russian art. And then you have the era of classicism during the reign of Catherine II, when the Russian Imperial Academy of the Arts was established in 1757. And the original name, I think, was, I forgot the original, I think it was Academy of Arts, and it was renamed as Imperial Academy by Catherine the Great. And Dmitry Levitsky is considered to be a great portraitist during that time. Now, these are just a few images that I have collected. So image 1 is Portrait of Peter the Great by Ivan Nikitin. Then you have a bust of Catherine the Great by Fedor Shubin, who's another great sculptor belonging to that era. And the third image is the icon screen that is attributed to Ivan Zarudny, the mastermind, behind St. Paul and Peter Cathedral. So this is the iconostasis, the icon screen, technically, that is attributed to Ivan Zarudny. Okay. Again, you have more painters. And here, the central event happened in 1863, which is an artistic revolt, a cultural revolt, by some of the most talented students of the Imperial Academy. They sort of rebelled against the conservatism that was taught to them in the academy, and therefore they formed a group called the Society of the Itinerant Art Exhibitions. So members of this society, they went around, traveling around the country, and they started preaching political and artistic reform. With artistic, they also started preaching political reform, and they also held, ad hoc exhibitions of their works that they created during their travels. So Ivan Kramskoy, Ilya Repin, and Ivan Shishkin are a few of the itinerant artists. And eventually, there was a period of turmoil, and like all good things have to come to an end, the society also fell apart due to internal disagreements. And Russian art at this period entered a period of turmoil that sort of, lasted till the 1917 revolution. So various societies were established, new styles were, brought in, and you have got painters like Mikhail Larinov, Natalia Goncharova, and then abstract art was there. You have futurism, rayonism, constructivism. All these movements came simultaneously after the Society of Itinerant Art Exhibitions had their say. So I have a few paintings for you because these paintings are too beautiful. So I couldn't help but include a few paintings in the presentation. The first one is The Beekeeper by Ivan Kramskov. Okay. I mean, I don't know why, but I felt very sad looking at the beekeeper. He seemed so lost in thought. The second big painting that I have here is The Bridge in the Woods by Raphael Levitsky. A very beautiful painting because if you look at the kind of detail, I'm not an expert in paintings or art, but even I felt stirring in my heart while looking at these paintings. It is so beautiful, the kind of minute details that they are able to incorporate in the paintings. Then moving on to, the more modern moments, you have Forest Red Green by Natalia Goncharova. Okay, these are all the later periods in art. And then you have Zinaida Zerebriokawa, who has given us a self-portrait. It's called At the Dressing Table. And while I was reading about her, I found out that she had a very difficult time. Jamila ma'am was already saying about, how the artist had to flee. And this is one lady who suffered a lot. She had to flee. She couldn't take her family with her. And I think it's only after a period of about, I think she had about 4 kids, if my memory serves me right. Okay. And she could only take 2 of her children to Paris. And the other 2, I think she saw only after a span of decades because, she couldn't go back to the Soviet Russia. And then you have a sculpture here. It's called The Head of a Demon by Mikhail Vrubel. So during the Soviet era, art, all forms of art was a political tool. And many artists therefore left Russia because, they couldn't express themselves. If at all they try to express themselves, they would find the Soviet police at their doorstep soon after. And then, though after Stalin's death there was a period of thaw, the situation was still perilous. I mean, they could not express themselves as freely as they used to before the revolution. And then during the thaw, Khrushchev, who was the next popular leader after Stalin, he got into a very public argument with a sculptor called Ernst Neizvestin. Okay, and this argument was about what is the function of art. And Ernest Neizvestin absolutely refused to bow down before Khrushchev, and it got into a full-blown affair. So again, the situation became a little more turbulent. And then you have all these underground non-conformist art. So nobody would know where the art is coming from. They would produce works of art in secret because it was safer for them to do that. And 1990s is usually considered to be an era of freedom. And you have a lot of installation artists. And I have given you an example of an installation artist here. This husband and wife couple. So this work is not being staged in Russia. This exhibition has been held in New York. Koble, couple Koble. They are this is actually the face of contemporary era Russian art. The name is Ilya and Emilia Kabakov, and that work is called Ship of Tolerance. An apt name, because they all have been through a lot of things that we cannot even fathom. Next, we move on to performing arts, which is a very rich array. Okay, ballet, theater, puppet theater, opera, circus, and of course, my favorite, folk dances. So ballet was first introduced in the early 18th century. And it said that, Empress Elizabeth was very, very captured, enamored of this art form. And therefore, she invited other artists, foreign artists to come to Russia. And the country's first school was formed in 1734. And till 19th century, you can find a lot of French and Italian influences in Russian ballet. And it's later, that is towards the early 19th century, that Russia started infusing their ballet with their own folk tradition. So you have the original Russian ballet only towards the beginning of the 19th century. So the dramatic and ballet theaters, you have to remember, they were completely under the control of the government. And therefore, actors and dancers were often government employees, and often they were treated quite badly. Nevertheless, theatrical life was quite active throughout the 19th century, and famous Russian actors and dancers of the early part of the century include the ballerina Istomina and the actor Mikhail Skepkin. So since the 1820s, Russian dancers have reigned supreme in the ballet stage. I mean, there was none to compare with them. Since the 1820s, you have many choreographers, even those of known Russian origin, who has worked for the Russian Imperial Theatre. And you have people like Maya Plisitskaya. It's her image that I have given here. She's considered to be quite a remarkable ballerina, and she's known for her very graceful moves. And I'm sure that all of us are familiar with the name Swan Lake by Tchaikovsky, because Swan Lake has been made into numerous ballets. It has been made into numerous movies. So Maya Plisitskaya was one of those people who was very well versed in enacting the swan. Sorry, I forgot to mention the famous ballet troupes. You have troupes like Bolshoi Theatre and Mariinsky Theatre, and Sergei Diaghilev's Ballet Russe is actually considered to be the most famous troupe in Russian ballet history. Moving on to theatre. So the beginning of theatre. So it's probably during the medieval period that theatre, we did not have theatre per se, but you had traveling performers and royal jesters. They were popularly known as squads of merry men. And this was all folk comedy. And this was rather ribald in nature. They had very comic sketches which were interlaced with sexual innuendos. And this was something that was frowned upon by the Russian Orthodox Church. And after a while, Church completely banned this folk squads of merry men. They were not allowed to perform anymore. So the most popular entertainment at that time was folk comedy. And often, rich and influential people, they would hire performers who would be staying at their homes and giving performances for their guests. And there were also, wandering jesters who would perform before, an impromptu group, and they would live off the donations that have been given to them. Donations primarily was, food items, that's it. And after, Orthodox Church eventually condemned the short clothes that were worn by the performers and the masks and the ribald jokes, these people had to quit their folk artistry. Now, Russian theatre acquired a professional phase during the 17th century, during the time of Tsar Alexei Mikhailovich, when an imperial theatre was founded by a pastor called Grigory, Lutheran pastor called Grigory. That's rather strange. Think about it. The theater was founded by a pastor called Grigory. You would never, associate a pastor with theater, but here you have a theater-loving pastor. So what Grigory did was that, he collected a group of artists. Since he couldn't get Russian artists, he made do with a German artist, and he started performing short comedies. So at a later stage, you have imperial theaters, okay, which were funded by the royal court. And like in all the other arts, genres of art, you have foreigners being invited to join the troupe. And these foreigners would, give their own contributions to the theater. And there are three types of theater that I have identified. I mean, the classification is there in Russian history: school theater, serf theater, and public theater. Now, school theater, I found it very amusing because school theater was formed at the Slavic Greek Latin Academy. It usually staged holiday performances, including the entire school body. So the teachers would write the scripts, students would perform on stage. So I thought it was really nice. And serf theaters, that's again another unique thing that is there in Russian cultural arena, because there are noble families who would open their own private theaters in which serfs, who are the bonded slaves, including women, performed. And here you have a very interesting story of a lady called Praskovia Zemzhugava Kovaleva, who was a serf. And she, after all her performances, she became very popular. And later she married a count. She married the Count Nikolai Sheremetyev, and she became a countess. Talk about, the tale of a poor woman becoming a princess. Well, here the poor woman became a countess. That's a beautiful story. So again, you have the third type of theater, public theater, where, Peter I ordered the creation of a public playhouse, which was a comedy theater that was built for him on Red Square in Moscow. And soon, the Moscow literary scene and the entire Russian scene, they were all very fond of these theatrical performances. So in the later half of the 18th century, large audiences began attending theatrical performances. And this became an integral part of Russian culture. So you have the Moscow Art Theater created by Konstantin Stanislavski and Vladimir Nemirovich in 1898. And this theater is very famous for its production of Chekhov's plays. And Chekhov's plays were quite popular in Russia. And during the Soviet era, there was a lot of censorship, but theaters thrived because the Soviet authorities thought, perfect way for, propaganda. And they, and they encouraged artists to create plays that would appeal to the common people, the peasants, the proletariat, so that the authorities can just sit back and relax. They don't have to do the propaganda. The plays will do the propaganda for them. And here you have one important name, Meyerhold, Sevold Meyerhold, because he is somebody who added humor and satire to classical works, and he turned them into spectacular performances. So in the modern times, in the contemporary era, theater has regained its vigor. And it's also notable that in Russia, you have the first permanent theater in the world for the deaf and mute, which is operated in Moscow. And the character's speech and feelings were conveyed through pantomime, gestures, dance. So that is something I found quite remarkable about Russian theater. Now coming on to puppet theater, which was a very popular art form in Russia. It's rather difficult to find out where it came from because, during my reading, I found out there was this ancient Slavic tradition where they made male and female dolls, okay? Kupalo for male, Marina for female dolls. And in the course of the festivities, the female dolls were kidnapped. And the women had to get these dolls back. And eventually it would result in a tug of war in which, these dolls were filled with straw. The effigies will be pulled apart. So that custom is Slavic custom is considered to be one of the origin theories of puppet theater. So you have the universal character of Petrushka, which is a very popular puppet in Russian theater. Now, we don't know whether Petrushka is actually Russian because he has quite a number of similarities with the image of the character of Pulcinella from Italy. So maybe, all these European theaters, puppet theaters are connected in ways that we don't know. So you have glove puppets, you have road puppets, you have marionettes, and these are all popularized by minstrels who are known as skomoroks. These skomoroks, like I told you earlier, the wandering performers who got into trouble with the Russian Orthodox Church, yes, they were skomoroks. So puppet theater in the 20th century was popularized by Nina Simonovich Efimova, who got a lot of support from the Russian authorities. That was one reason why she was able to popularize puppet theater in the 20th century. And she primarily used road puppets. And then the Obraztsov puppet theater in Moscow was, a contribution of Sergei Obraztsov, who popularized classic folk tales, fairy tales, tales for children, and he primarily used glove puppets. So you have an image of Russian puppet theater. And then opera and circus, I thought I should just mention these two forms because they're quite popular in Russia. So the origin of Russian opera you can take it back to the 18th century when Empress Anna was so taken in by Italian opera troupe that she thought, I should have my own opera troupe. So she invited Italians here to teach the natives, and slowly Russians also started developing their own operas. And 19th century is usually considered to be the golden age of operas. And like all other arts, opera also faced a period of censorship during the Stalin era. And today you again have the blooming of Russian operas. Now, circus is again something that is spectacular in the Russian arena. Moscow State Circus, it's actually, a collective of circuses. And it's known for its wonderful presentations. And one thing is they are probably, one of the first countries. I don't know if they are the first people, but they're definitely one of the first troops to come to train the bears to do all these activities. The bears in Russia are very, very inventive. They will ride bicycles, they will do all sorts of tricks. And this reference to the bear in the circus is also seen in the popular cartoon Masha and the Bear, where the bear is actually a retired circus performer. It's a very lovely cartoon. I would advise everybody to go and see the cartoon. And again, circus surprisingly also became a tool of Soviet propaganda. Soviets, they would never leave anything alone. Now, coming to folk dances, they're very, very broad and diverse because Russia is not a land where there is just, one ethnic group. You have several ethnic groups in Russia. And so you have several dancing styles, Eastern Slavic, Turkic, Uralic, Mongolian, and then you have all these dances, Khorovod, Barynya, Kamarinskaya, Chechotka, Karelian, Komi, Ingush, Chechen. So the first picture that I've given here, where everybody is jumping up, that is Barynya. Barynya literally means landlady. So this dance is accompanied by very vigorous movements. They jump up, they twirl. No wonder, they have such fit athletic bodies because dancing is vigorous in Russia. And they use the refrain Barynya, Barynya throughout their dance routine. And the second image here is a Chechen dance, which is more of twirling and less of jumping. Okay, so it's again another beautiful dance. And folk dances are always accompanied by folk music and folk musical instruments. Now we move on to motion pictures. The first point that I want to say here is that Malayalam movie industry is known as Mollywood. Okay, and I found out that Russian cinema industry is also known as Mollywood. M for Moscow and then plus Hollywood is Mollywood. So Malayalis have a lot in common with Russian cinema, Mollywood. So the first narrative film in Russian is Stenka Razin by Alexander Drankov. And you have other filmmakers like Alexander Khanzonkov, Ivan Mozukin, and Olga Preobrazhenskaya, who is the first female Russian film director. And that was quite an accomplishment back then. because women were not usually allowed to direct films in patriarchal Russia, but that was quite an accomplishment by Olga Preobrazhenskaya. And ironically, Russian cinema attained a lot of popularity during the Soviet times, because you have the figures of Eisenstein and Kuleshov. They are both people, who have contributed a lot to world cinema. Eisenstein, I think, in every film study syllabus, we have to study Battleship Potemkin. It's that landmark movie. And then late Kuleshov is the person who gave us the idea of montage, where two sequential shots are put together rather than one shot. So the first shot will be a repetition, but depending on the second shot, audience tend to interpret the expression of the first shot or the mood of the first shot accordingly. So that was a brilliant editing process. And the All Union Institute of Cinematography, which trained filmmakers in agitprop. Now, agitprop is again, another portmanteau word that was used by the Russian Soviets. I mean, the Soviet authorities. You have to give it to them. They were very, very innovative. Agitprop is agitation plus propaganda. They thought that through movies, this is what we should do. So they because they believed in the principles of socialist realism, and then they thought, okay, this is what the movie should portray: socialist realism. So they wouldn't allow any of the filmmakers to show anything that they considered to be revolutionary, or they considered to be, not so good. And it's said that, Russian cinema was greatly supported by Lenin, who recognized that films did have the capacity or the capability to communicate their messages to the illiterate and the non-Russian speaking audiences. So this school, All Union Institute of Cinematography, they train filmmakers in agitprop, and therefore, that the filmmakers could produce movies that showcased agitprop. So you have, certain movies that, like The Cranes Are Flying, which sort of, broke the Soviet realism, socialist realism models. So I have given a few names: Grigory Chukrai, Grigory Kozintsev, Andrei Tarkovsky. These are all people who contributed to Russian cinema during the Soviet era and after during the Khrushchev era as well. Then 1980s and 1990s are considered to be a crisis period in Russian cinema, because the state subsidies that were there for the cinema, that was suddenly taken back. And they did not know, how to produce movies. I mean, they did not have the capital to produce movies. And therefore, during this time, Western cinema became very, very popular. And if at all Russian filmmakers produced movies, there was the argument that they produced movies only for the award circle and not for the popular masses. But you have, two movies, Moscow Does Not Believe in Tears and Nikita Mikhalkov Was Burned by the Sun, which have received the Academy Awards. And Alexander Sokurov is a very famous filmmaker in Russia of the contemporary era. He has produced movies like Mother and Son and Russian Art. The two images that I have given here, the first one is Eisenstein, and the second one, the very contemplative looking person, is Lev Kuleshov. So speaking about the musical legends of Russia, Russian music initially was solely religious. You had the choral hymns of the Russian Orthodox Church. They're very beautiful to listen to. And it is only much, much later that Russian music was given a secular tint. You had secular, and remember, we had folk music, but they were not actually promoted by the empire as such. So even when we had packets of folk music, they were not exactly very popular. So opera music, like I said earlier, became very popular in the 18th century. And in the 19th century, you have the Russian Music Society, established by Anton Rubinstein and his brother Nikolai. Now, Anton Rubinstein was an accomplished pianist, and he was a very famous musician. And he and along with his brother, he had a group called the Mighty Handful. And they were a group of composers who were known for incorporating religious elements and folk music in their works. Again, we have to look at the work of Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky, who gave us the Swan Lake. And in the early 20th century, the romances became popular. And you have people like Fyodor Shaliapin, Alexander Vertinsky, Konstantin Sokolovsky, and Pyotr Leschenko. And again, during the Soviet era, artists had to flee. They couldn't, survive in Soviet Russia. And Magnetizard recorded and distributed music. Now, Magnetizard actually stands for the musical underground. I mean, like, you have the Forbidden Realms. They were people who nobody knew about. But these people recorded music that were otherwise forbidden in Soviet Russia. So they propagated rock music, jazz music, which were all considered to be against the Soviet regime. And after the fall of communism, many artists returned back to Russia, but popular consensus is that the earlier creativity was lost because the present rock bands and the jazz bands, they are seen to be largely imitative of Western music. So people do not have a very high opinion of the present music troops. There are classical music troops which have its own, followers, but I'm talking about the Russian rock bands. Now, coming to the Russian folk music, like the folk dances, various ethnic groups had their own styles. Their own suddenly became one. That's a typo. And they had a largely oral tradition. As in, these songs were not recorded anywhere, but they were, transmitted from generation to generation through oral tradition. And usually these songs were very specifically about Russian village life, their traditions, their festivals, their small quibbles, all these things. And they were, accompanied by musical instruments like balalaika. Here you have the little girl who's holding a balalaika in her hand. See the triangular head of the balalaika as opposed to the guitar's shape. Then you have gusli. Gusli is again a multi-stringed pluck instrument. Then a domra, which is a long-necked instrument. Then you have bayan, which is a button accordion. And then you have kalyuka, which is the Russian flute. Okay, fancy names for instruments that we are well aware of. And during the Soviet era, you actually have a revival of folk music because, they did not want to associate with Western trends. So they were negating Western trends and thereby bringing back the folk music because they considered that to be their tradition. And folk music was often associated with the proletariat. And again, like, movies and theater, Russian music also became a very popular tool of propaganda. There were all these nationalist songs that would bring up anybody's national fervor, such songs. And folk songs are still considered to be very popular in post-Soviet Russia. Now, coming to the literary legends of Russia. Russia has a vast array of writers. I cannot possibly talk about all the writers here, but let me just go through the not the important, the ones that I like, because this is a very personal selection. I cannot say important because there might be others that, who others consider important, lots of others. So early Russian literature was ecclesiastical in nature, and it was primarily controlled by the Russian Orthodox Church. And it was during the Kievan period that there was a rise in translations, hagiographies, and secular works. So one of the earliest works in Russian literature is a song of Igor's campaign. Igor was a prince, early prince of Russia. And it's after the time of, or it is during the time of Peter the Great that you have a break in Russian literary history. Because during Peter's time, you have a sudden westernization. Okay, the country suddenly underwent a process of westernization. And suddenly, there was this perception of Russia as a young country. So all these centuries of Russian history were sort of negated in the blink of an eye. And there were a group of people who thought that, they should come up with a new idea of Russia. So that was a watershed moment in Russian literary history. And in the 19th century is known as the golden age of Russian poetry. And you have the figure of Alexander Pushkin, whose image I've used in this slide. He is known to be the best poet in Russia. And I've also heard that if you criticize Pushkin's works in Russia, you are done for. It's considered to be blasphemy to criticize Pushkin in Russia. He is their national poet, and his major works are Ruslan and Rukmila, The Gypsies, The Bronze Horseman, Boris Godunov, Eugene Onegin, which is actually structured like a novel, but a novel in verse. And then The Queen of Spades, that's a short story. And Queen of Spades, is a short story that talks about avarice. It's a very beautiful story with a lot of supernatural elements. That said that, the later writers, especially Dostoevsky and all, have actually taken elements from the Queen of Spades in crafting their own narratives. Not that they have, copied or lifted everything. No, that is not what I'm implying, but that they have taken certain motives from these works. Again, you have the figure of Mikhail Lermontov, who is known as Russia's romantic poet, okay? And Nikolai Gogol, who was known for his satires. He was somebody who would, wittingly criticize the social institutions, the government, everybody, and got away with it as well. And his famous works are The Inspector General and Dead Souls. And Gogol is also somebody who specialized in using the grotesque. In some of his works, like The Nose, you have him using elements of grotesque. Now I come to the great novelists, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, and Turgenev, without whom you cannot talk about Russian literature. So Dostoevsky, I'm sure that most of us have heard about Crime and Punishment. And his other works are Notes from the Underground, The Brothers Karamazov, The Idiot. And he's somebody who talked about the intricacy of the human mind. And Dostoevsky was often somebody who was preoccupied with how humans are caught up in inextricable ties, in situations from which there is no escape, there is no release. So in his works like Crime and Punishment and The Brothers Karamazov, you see the internal landscape of the characters. That is something that, Dostoevsky is always preoccupied with. Again, Tolstoy is somebody who's quite, similar to Dostoevsky. He is known as the realist master of Russian fiction. Because in his works like War and Peace or Anna Karenina, you see the common life in Russia. You're not talking about, glorified images of Russian elite. You see life as it was. And Tolstoy was also somebody who was very much concerned about the horrors of war. And that is something that you see in War and Peace. Now, Tolstoy and Dostoevsky, there were two authors who were also preoccupied with religious ideas. Tolstoy even had a spiritual reawakening in the course of his life, and it said that he denounced all his earlier works, and he adopted a very ascetic life, and that sort of made him a recluse, in the sense that his wife couldn't understand why this man was doing all this. He gave up the copyright to his earlier works. So that was Tolstoy for you. And Dostoevsky, though he did not go to such extremes, he was also somebody who was of a primarily philosophical bent of mind. Now, Turgenev, if you compare Ivan Turgenev with both Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, he was somebody who remained a realist master. Okay, and when ma'am was talking about the bond between the Russian writers, I was also reminded about the rift between the Russian writers. Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, and Turgenev did not get along well. Especially Dostoevsky and Tolstoy had a habit of ganging up against Turgenev. But then Tolstoy and Turgenev shared a more warm relationship, at least towards the end of their literary career. Now, Sportsman Sketches by Turgenev, that is considered to be a very famous collection of short stories, and that was something that garnered him a lot of fame. But his magnum opus is Fathers and Sons, a novel which unfortunately was critically panned in Russia. And he was absolutely, heartbroken that people did not understand his masterpiece. So, unlike Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, Turgenev was a realist through and through. He did not share the religious epiphanies of his contemporaries. And you have another delightful writer, Chekhov, who is one of the world's greatest short story writers. And Chekhov was somebody who specialized in giving you a slice of real life in a very small palette, okay, because his were primarily short stories and plays. The Cherry Orchard is one of his most famous plays, and The Bishop and the Duel are short stories. Now, those are the three writers for you, Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, who are looking very, very pessimistic as they gaze out at us. And then you have Turgenev, who is also not looking very happy in this particular picture. Moving on to the Russian symbolist. Now, unlike the French symbolist, the Russian symbolist saw art as a means to, reach higher reality. And they were Valery Brusov, Alexander Blok, Andrei Bely. And their works talk about, going beyond art. They were primarily concerned about using symbols to manifest certain emotional landscapes or certain emotional facts that otherwise couldn't be expressed through ordinary language. And Zinaida Gippius is a very famous feminist Russian symbolist who also had philosophical ideals in her poetry. Now, after Russian symbolists, so these are all poets, basically Russian symbolists, acmeists, and futurists, they are Russian poets. Acmeists believed in, clarity. They believed in clarity of expression. They believed in a compact form for poetry. And you have Nikolai Gumilov, Anna Akhmatova, Osip Mandelshev. And then you have futurists like Velimir Klebnikov and Vladimir Mayakovsky. Okay, so futurists, they rejected the past. They advocated modernism. They were all for cultural rejuvenation. And you have Marina Savetseva, Savetieva. Oh my God, such difficult surnames. Okay, let's just call her Marina for the time being. So, why I wanted to stress her name is that, see, Osip Mandelshev, Anna Akhmatova, and Marina have a connection. Osip Mandelshev, at various points in his life, was madly in love with Anna Akhmatova and Marina. This caused a lot of trouble in his own life, and his wife later on was friendly with Akhmatova, but never with Marina. She thought there was too much of a proprietary air in Marina. Now, Marina is also, one of the tragic figures, not just Marina, Osip also. Osip Mandelshev also, because they are all people. And he even died in exile, not exile, he even died in prison, I think. And his manuscripts were later published by his wife, who memorized the entire lot because she thought that, these poems could never be reclaimed. And Anna Akhmatova is rightly, from whom Jamila ma'am quoted the lines, is considered to be one of the best poets in Russian history. And then I have given you a few works. These are all writers who had to go away from Russia during the Soviet era. Pasternak, Dr. Zhivago, Sholzin's Cancer Ward, and Gulag Archipelago. Gulag Archipelago is not fiction, it is actually non-fiction. And he was made notorious through that work, notorious for the Soviet authorities. Then you have Nabokov with his Lolita and Pale Fire. Then you have Yevgenia Ginsburg, Journey into the Whirlwind, which again tells you a very harrowing account of what happens to female prisoners. Her account tells you, what is it that females have to endure in the Soviet prisons. And you have Nina Berberova's The Italics Are Mine, which is actually an autobiography, not a novel. So these are the three grand ladies of Russian literature. You have Anna Akhmatova. Then there is this Marina, whose surname I will just, not say. This is Ginsburg. Okay. So let me conclude by talking about the cultural institutions. Some of the world's best museums can be found in Moscow and St. Petersburg. And why do I say this? Because I want to emphasize the kind of pride that Russians have in showcasing their culture. and the kind of care that they take in preserving their culture, their varied tapestry. Because, when you visit the museums, Pushkin Fine Arts Museum or Hermitage in St. Petersburg, all of us are asked to put, socks-like objects, plastic socks-like objects on our soles so that we don't damage the flooring there. And we are not allowed to touch anything. And it's not like, we can draw graffiti here and there. You will be done for. There are several guards posted all along the corridors. And I was struck by the kind of care that they take in preserving their legacy. And that is something that we should, learn from them. So all these museums, they showcase an extensive collection featuring Russian history and culture. And they know that they have a great cultural and artistic legacy, and they want to preserve it. So these museums are dedicated to preserving the Russian artistic legacy. My last slide is going to be a video of the Barynyas dance. I don't know if you will be able to hear the sound or not, so kindly pardon. Please imagine the lyrics if you're not able to hear the sound. It's Barynya, and some other Russian words, which I'm not familiar with. No sound. But soon you will have, vigorous dance movements. I'm really sorry about the fact that there is no sound for the video. Had I been a musical maestro, I would have sung for you, but alas, I am not.
But you can feel through the movements.
Yeah, the rhythm.
Yeah, the rhythm of the song.
And the uniform movements and the vigor that they put into their moves. So all, through the dance, they keep on using the refrain, Barynya, Barynya. And in the background, you can see the Balalaikas, the big ones and the small ones. And you have the bayan there, the accordion. And this is the Russian tap dance. These steps are incorporated into the the Barynya dance. Thank you very much for patiently listening to me.
Thank you, Liji. That was excellent. Very proud of you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Such a lot of information has gone into it, and a lot of hard work, I'm sure, has gone into the presentation of slides. But
thank you, ma'am.
As a teacher, which I always tell you, the hard work will always remain with you.
Thank you, ma'am.
It will never desert you. So your
words are my greatest certificate.
And we also learned so much about Russia and the Russian museums and the art forms. You had a lot of compliments in the chat box. Before I open it for discussion, let me just read out what you have in the chat box. The first one was from Rama Anandaram, said, good introduction of the topic. Kalyani has said, very informative, detailed and interesting presentation. Liji, thanks a lot. Kudos to Trivandrum branch for continuing the sessions. Welcome. And then we had one from Vasanthi Ramesh, which said, very interesting and fully packed with information. And GBG Varghese says, congrats, Liji Varghese. Your presentation was incredibly insightful and well-researched. Thank you for the detailed information you provided of Russia. I think. And then Bhuneshwari says, wonderful presentation. We, the participants, enjoyed the narrations as much as Liji enjoyed talking about it. It was quite a lively and as though we were in a classroom and not attending remotely. Thank you so much. Sheila Kakwe says, thank you very much for such an interesting and informative webinar, Madam Liji and Team Trivandrum. And Deepa Prasad says, beautiful Liji. And I must say, you took us on a cruise through Russian art and culture. So thank you for the cruise. And now the floor is open for questions.
Thank you for
And
all the
discussion.
lovely comments. Thank you very much.
And many more comments too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Liji,
Yeah,
Of sharing
go
the
ahead,
screen.
Kamini. Go ahead.
That was a very interesting presentation, Liji. You've taken so much effort.
Thank you, Kamini ma'am.
And you have talked about art, dance, painting, drama, literature, cinema, opera, circus. You have covered everything possibly.
Thank you, ma'am.
You can do. You did a wonderful job.
Thank you, ma'am.
Feeling that I think Kerala is very much was a friend of USSR and still a friend of Russia, I think. So
Yeah.
I remember like they have a Russian center here, no? So these
Yes.
dancers used to come and dance here.
Oh,
I remember.
wonderful.
And even the circus, Kerala had in Kannur, I think, the
Russian
center for circus. And I remember seeing a circus where you had Russian artists also. I remember that. So, and what about the present day Russia, Liji? It
Which
continues,
aspect, ma'am?
all these continues even now in the
Yes, ma'am. Especially the folk dance, the folk songs, and the circus, they are extremely popular in present day Russia because they see it as an embracing of their own culture rather than aping Western customs. They think that, they should go back to their roots.
As a child, I remember we used to be so excited to say that the Russian circus has come to town.
I know,
Come
I
to town.
remember. Yeah. Russian circus, exactly.
Yes, ma'am.
That was wonderful, Liji.
Thank you, ma'am.
Proud of you, okay? Thank you.
As somebody who
Can I-
is
can I say
artistically
something?
challenged. Yes, ma'am.
Can you close your
I have to stop sharing, right, ma'am?
yeah,
Sharing.
and then maybe you can see everyone.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Can I say something? I'm Shika here.
Yeah, please
Yes, ma'am.
unmute and come on video so we can also see you.
Thank. Yeah, my internet is very poor.
Okay.
Both will not go side by side.
Okay,
So,
go
no, first of all, I want to thank Liji for wonderful presentation, and
Thank you,
she has
Shikha.
she has made me nostalgic because in the 60s, when I was too young, then every year we used to go and see the circus, Russian circus and ballet, which used to come in Calcutta, especially every year. So it is a nostalgic moment for me to hear it from you. It is really, I recollect everything in my memories. It was so wonderful, circus. They were so good in trapeze.
Yeah.
Very, very, very nice. Thank you very much, Liji.
Thank you, Shikha. Thank you. You made my day.
And like Liji said, Liji, I was remembering the bears on the cycles.
The prayers on the cycle.
Shall I say something?
Yeah, please do.
Good afternoon.
Yeah.
Liji, wonderful presentation.
Thank you,
It is
Kuljit ma'am.
as beautiful as you are.
Thank you, ma'am.
So in so many Hindi movies also, they have copied the ballerina, and we could see the circus artist also in one of
Yes.
the movies of Raj Kapoor. And then I could identify with the literature because I've read Russian literature. And especially everybody has heard about Dostoevsky, his Idiot. His Idiot, I prefer to Crime and Punishment. I really love that book. I really, really love that book. And then War and Peace and Tolstoy's writings, everybody has read. And then Pushkin's poetry. I've read Pushkin's poetry also. And there is one book called The Mother. I know who is the writer. I forget the writer. But that was also a very impressive novel. So I really appreciate and love this Russian literature. And your presentation has revived all those memories of my young days when I was doing my post-graduation. So normally the credit goes to Jamila ji, and she reminds me of about all these literary personalities. But in your presentation today, you have given life to the literature, to the culture, circus, ballerina, everything has come alive. Thank you so much. My special thanks to Trivandrum also for creating such an atmosphere. We can go back to the literary writers and we can enjoy, we can think of those days. We can again experience those days when we used to read such literature. No? Very interesting. Again, I think I'll have to go to the recording and listen it carefully again. But it was a wonderful presentation. You have really put in lots and lots of hard work. And I always appreciate Jamila Begum's choice. Every time she brings the speakers, they are out of this world. Thank you so much, Usha, also, for giving such presentations, such programs which are out of this world. And I really look forward to this program. You
Thank
always
you.
send that a personal invitation also, but I always remember that today is a Trivandrum program. Thank you so much, Jamila ji. Thank you so much, Liji, and all the members, and Usha and Bhuvneshwari and everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Guljeet ma'am. This time also, the credit goes to Jamila ma'am because she's the one who made me who I am today. She's my guide.
Yeah, I could make out. But I wonder how she knows everything about every program, whether it's Greece or Soviet Union or whatever it is. She knows about all the countries, about the literature also, and she talks in such a confident manner as though she has been teaching this subject also, that subject also. I really wonder that.
We used
Today
to
also,
call
she was
Jamila
so
ma'am
impressive, so
encyclopedia.
impressive. She was so impressive today also. You don't feel that she has copied or she has tried to copy or learn this as though it comes from her heart. No, it's always like that.
Yeah, I think
All the
we all come from that generation of very passionate lovers of
Yes,
literature.
that of
That
course.
is why.
That I agree with you.
Oh, and also, the hard work that goes on behind carrying on the series. Actually,
Yes.
Sheila puts in a lot of effort and a lot of time into this.
That you can make out and you can feel it also. The way she is so passionately involved in every program, every time, you can feel that passion behind that.
Thank you.
Very nice.
I think GB wanted to say something. GB? GB is the secretary of the Trivandrum chapter. Welcome, GB.
She's also my sister.
Hats off,
Yeah,
hats
I
off to
know.
you. Hats off to you, Liji. Proud of you. Really proud.
Thank you. Thank you, Gigi.
It reflects your presentation was really authentic and it reflects your deep understanding about. It seems you are a Russian. ഒരു റഷ്യക്കാരി പറയുന്ന അതേ പാഷനിലും അതേ ഒത്തന്റിക് ഇതിലുമാണ് പറഞ്ഞത് and so it has sparked our interest in learning more about Russian culture. Dance.
Thank you, Gigi.
We are only familiar with Dostoevsky and Anna Karenina. Now we need to know. And particularly we enjoyed about the Mollywood.
No.
Maldives Mollywood and Russian Mollywood.
Mollywood.
Okay, Liji. So thank you so much. Thank you. And hats off to your expertise once again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jamila ma'am, thank you for bringing all these germs to this platform. Yeah. So
One thing I tell Liji is, as a research scholar, I know how far I can drive my scholars. So I called her up and said, you are going to do the second part and this is what you should do. And I knew that Liji would rise to the occasion.
She put her best effort in making PPTs and all the well-researched presentation. Thank you, Liji. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gigi.
Liji,
Jamila
I've been
ma'am's
to
word
St.
is my
Petersburg
command.
Museum also.
Pardon?
I've been to that museum in St. Petersburg.
Yes, the same Hermitage.
Yes. I have visited that museum. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's a beautiful
Like
museum.
Paris.
Liji has also gone to Russia. So that was my choice for Russia. He has seen Russia.
Yeah, Manjula wants to say something. Manjula
Yeah.
Suresh, you can unmute and speak.
Manjula?
Manjula Suresh has raised hand and
She's
please
raised.
unmute Manjula.
She's
Uh,
not.
Kunda,
Yes, yes.
raise her hand.
Yeah, she has raised her hand. Manjula, please unmute and then talk.
I think she's not able to unmute.
I think we
Okay.
have Harsha Merchant saying very nice presentation. Russian people love Hindi cinema songs,
Yeah, they do.
especially Avaho. Congratulations to the presenter and the AIWC.
Thank you. Thank you.
Manjula?
Well, she's still muted. I think she's probably not able to unmute herself. She's also a regular attendee
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, she's a regular.
She joins from Coimbatore.
Nargis and Raj Kapoor, they had a special relationship with Russia.
Yeah. There was a movie, that Hindi movie. I was just thinking.
That's what we have learned when we were young.
Yeah,
When I was young.
when we were
Others
also,
are still very young.
Yeah, yeah.
we are all, many of us are old. Yeah, me.
Which film was that? Avaraho?
Yes, something like
It's a strength. And I didn't want to say about movies because Kuljit will say, Bhuvaneshwari.
So that you left that space for me. Bhuvaneshwari ji.
Yeah, that I left.
Thank you.
Lali Varghese is Rani?
No, that's my mother.
Oh. We would like to see her. Liji's mother is here. Why don't you show yourself?
She's
be
the one
very
who
proud
inspired.
mother.
Ah,
Liji
She's the one
proud
who
mother to have
inspired
such a
me to do
daughter.
this. No, she's the artistic genius in the family, and I'm somebody without any artistic competence. So it is only natural that I do a presentation on art.
her Liji's mother is very good with the arts and crafts and all. And I remember she did a bead desktop bid for me. Remember?
Yes.
So.
And I tell her that her greatest work of art is me, myself. Though she doesn't agree to that.
Deepa is here.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and I'm sure
Deepa
Deepa
Chichi.
wants to ask a question to Liji.
Oh God.
Adide, Deepa Chichi, adide.
Yeah, I'll put some light questions. Since ma'am asked, I can't disobey her. We're all her students after all. So you described Chekhov as a short story writer.
Not just a short story writer, but also as a dramatist.
Yeah, he has written a short novel also. Yes, dramatist and short story, and there is one novel also, if I remember rightly. And also about Gogol, I don't know whether I missed it about his overcoat.
Oh, I haven't included that. No, you didn't miss it. I did not include that.
It's a very famous saying that goes, that everything comes from Gogol's overcoat.
Yes.
I thought I might have missed it.
No, I did not. I did not include it.
Because that's a point that they. Sorry, ma'am.
Go ahead.
No, it's something that they, kind of revere. And all the other writers came from, they started imitating or they were inspired by, he was a pathbreaker. So just something.
So next time I'll definitely include it.
Yeah, just something to adding to the discussion. That is all.
I thought, Deepa, you were going to ask to make a comparison of the short stories of Chekhov and O. Henry.
No, Deepa Chichi wouldn't do that to me.
Ma'am,
yeah.
An unkindliest cut, I guess. That. But it's a very beautiful presentation. It was all very methodically done. Of course, it's a vast history, the culture, the varied, there are so many varied threads, so to say, when you talk about Russian culture. So to capture it in a 60-minute framework is really a tough job to do. But I think Liji pulled it off. You managed
Thank you,
to.
Gigi.
Okay. Yeah, so these overcoat and all that overlooking of that happens when you're trying to compress so many things into this framework.
I don't know how I actually missed overcoat. I should have put that in.
No, that's okay. That's okay. It happens. There were so many other important points that you brought up.
Yeah.
I was just saying, since I was asked to, contribute.
Thank you, Deepa.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay.
Jimmy has said, GB says your smile throughout the presentation made the session more enjoyable.
Thank you, Gigi.
And Manchula Suresh, I think, can't unmute. She says, interesting and excellent webinar in the chat.
Thank you.
Yeah, she's trying to join again. I think she has some problem with the network, possibly.
And Bhuneshwari?
Yeah. No, I was just listening to everything, and really, it was wonderful presentation. As I
Thank
said,
you, Bhuneshwari, ma'am.
Yeah. Lots of things, we could, from our childhood days and all that, we could remember. And okay, we have read some books, like there's so many books like that.
Thank you, ma'am.
And if we have no other comments to Usha?
Yes, I think there are no other comments. So, Liji, thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Usha, ma'am.
And combined with your first presentation, I'm sure it gave a very comprehensive idea about Russia, its history, life, arts, everything, and made most of us want to go to Russia. I'm sure if organizers a trip, we'll have everyone join. We can all go to Russia and see what Liji has been talking about. And thank you especially for the effort that has gone into making these presentations. As GB said, we can make out that a lot of work has gone into it. You have spent a lot of time and effort in making these presentations. And maybe we can combine both these presentations and put it, they are already on YouTube, but we'll try to make it into a single presentation. Maybe Bhuneshwari can help us in doing that.
Yeah, we'll do that.
It's that complete picture about the country and its, the varied aspects. So we'll try to do that. Thank you, Liji. And
thank you, ma'am.
To all my AIWC friends, starting with Sheila Kakre, the patron who joined from Bombay, Kalyani Raj, the president who joined from Delhi, and senior members like Kuljit, Rama, Anantram, Shikha Mitra, and from all different parts of the country. Thank you so much. And thank you for all other non-AIWC members who have been regularly attending our webinars. It is a pleasure to have you all here, and we hope you will become part of AIWC and encourage us more. And Jamila, especially now for carrying this on. We have been doing this for 3 years now, almost 3 years.
Almost.
It has really been a very wonderful journey going through this. And this G20 series itself has been something very different. And we have gone from country to country and we have enjoyed. Each presentation has been as good as the other. All have been excellent presentations. But Russia, especially because it is such a huge country and there is so much to cover, we had to do it in 2 sessions. And I think, Jamila, will you tell them about the future sessions?
Yeah. Thank you, Liji. First of all, to add my words of thanks to what Usha said. It was indeed a very awe-inspiring presentation, I would say, which led us to so many nooks and corners of Russian art and culture. It was like visiting Russia. And if somebody would organize a trip to Russia, I'm sure all of us would jump into that cruise. So thank you.
Thank you,
for that wonderful presentation. And I would also like to tell everyone that our next presentation, the next 2 presentations will be on the tribals of Kerala and Tamil Nadu. So we have 2 presentations coming up on that before we follow it up with our making it to the 50th session with 2 presentations on America. That will be, the US will be our last presentation. And 2 sessions as we did Russia. Because like Russia, US, and India also we did in 2 sessions. Chitra did that for us. And US, I'm still looking out for someone who will be competent enough to take on that rather daunting task of presenting US in 2 hours. Anyway, I'm looking forward to these sessions, and thank you all once again for joining us, and hope all of you will join us again in our next session, which will be as usual on first Saturday. That will be August 3rd. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
And
ma'am.
I would like to just inform all of you that we have a webinar on Monday, that is 22nd. This is on climate change and why oceans are important in the discourse on about climate change. Maybe Bhuneshwari, you want to add something to it? She is the man in charge of climate change, and she is organizing the webinar.
Yeah, actually, it's a very new subject. But our expert speaker is Dr. Sheila Nair. She is an expert on ocean and marine matters, and it's at 3:30 on Monday. And we were knowing, we were talking about climate change all these days, but the role of ocean in climate change, in reducing climate change impacts, that's what we are going to discuss, and what we can do in the coastal areas, and how we can help in climate change mitigation. All these things are going to be talked, a presentation in the presentation.
To add to what Bhuneshwari just said, I wondered if all of you know that in the Hotstar, there is a series on the resilience in climate change, which is a very good series of sessions that are being done. And it's called Resilience and Climate Change, and in Hotstar. And this has been done for, I think, for a number of states. And they focus on different regions and see what is happening due to climate change, and how the people of that particular area are trying to overcome the drastic events that come after the climate change. I think that should be interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yes, we'll try to.
Resilience of climate change.
Okay, it's in Hotstar.
It's on Hotstar.
Awesome.
The annual climate change conference will happen in November. So before November, we are planning to have a series of sessions highlighting different aspects of climate change, mitigation, adaptation, and, as you say, resilience. So we'll try to have experts talk to us, so that when the conference happens, it is Baku in Azerbaijan. So when that happens, at least while following the reports, you will all be able to understand what they are talking about, and what are the topics being covered, and what are the new terminologies that are coming in. So I hope all of you will join and enjoy the sessions. So with that, shall we wind up now?
Yeah.
Once again, thank you, Liji, for that wonderful session. We enjoyed this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.